What Kierlinger Røkke has decided to do is extremely impressive. There's no doubt about that. And I think Sophia alluded to this, it's this philanthropic nature that is going to make some of the key changes that are going on in terms of understanding the oceans and creating a blue picture. But you said he's going to offer it for free. That sounds to me like a black hole for money to be thrown into. So somehow this has got to be, and using this word very, very carefully here, sustainable. Mm-hmm. It's got to be economically sustainable for its own success in the future. So how can you be developing those 3 goals that you pointed to and ensure its longevity?
Okay, for the vessel, 20% of the rooms are a super yacht, more or less. So this ship will be rented out maybe 25-30% of the time to people who can actually afford to rent such a ship. So and all that money will be brought back to finance the scientific part. And also the building in Oslo, we will have 18,000 square meters. But
how many floors is that, by the way?
60 something, I think.
60?
But, yeah. Okay. And the building is 90,000 square meters. So we will have 18,000, and the other ones will be hotels and offices, which will take care of the running of the building, the cost of running it.
Yeah, it takes a businessman to think like that, doesn't it?
Yes, and he certainly is that.
And when you're looking at the cluster organisation here, because you're talking about a lot of different companies that are sort of working together and collaborating, and when you hear about this kind of project that's sort of going on here, you must look at this and go, this is great, this is a real demonstration of how all the different sectors are actually beginning to sort of work together, listen to each other, and actually work on a horizontal platform towards a sustainable ocean. But how difficult has it been to actually get different companies to talk to each other? Because some of the companies you put up on your list are international companies, they're not Norwegian. And when you look at how they operate in different countries, let's forget Norway for a minute, let's look at the US, let's look at the UK. Some of those companies, if you put them in the same room together in London, they'll be staring at each other and not talking. So how are you managing to get them to talk to each other in Norway when those same companies can be in the same boardrooms, conference rooms in different countries and say nothing?
Yeah, that's a good question. When introducing the cluster program by our Prime Minister, in fact, back in 2006, one important part of this program was to establish trust among the partners and taking enough time and recognizing that it takes time to develop trust. And that's also why the government is supporting this cluster program, because this is something which needs some kind of public support in the beginning before the company develops this kind of understanding that if I talk to my neighbor company here, then I will achieve more than if I work by myself. So, I don't have a very good answer for it, but it takes time, and we started out with 10...
Your role is very much to invest in building trust.
Yeah, yes.
And getting them to work out what it is.
It's the soft element here, really. Yeah. And then we bring in hardcore technology. But we set up a lot of workshops, meeting places, starting projects at a small scale, and then slowly developing collaboration. And people are attracted to this, and we have more and more companies coming in along the way.
Let me ask you a particular question about the electrification route, because it's grabbed everybody's imagination at the moment. Just how far can we scale up that electrification? Because when we were looking at Martin Stopford's picture about global trade, of course, one of his bullet points effectively was we need to go bigger on the tonnage. But I see that there's a limit to what you can do with electrification here in terms of tonnage size. And there seems to be a little bit of a...
Yeah, of course, it's impossible to electrify the vessels in the deep sea segment. So we're talking about short sea shipping, fully electrical in the nearest years. But we see that batteries as an energy storage component represent an important fuel saver technology, which can also be implemented in larger ships. But if we are going towards zero emission for deep sea, I think we need to use other enabling technologies at the same time that we electrify.
And Sophia, is this where you see a lot of the crossover in competence between the different sectors here? When you're taking that and you're looking at it from the shipping or the mariculture or the shipbuilding, and you look at this ocean economy that you were talking about, do you see there being a lot more sort of horizontal discussions to try and share competence?
Definitely, it's really picking up. One good example is the latest joint venture between Vestas, the wind company, and Maersk Supply Service, who is identifying that they need to explore new areas. But it's very interesting, this opportunity of electrification, and can we ever have ocean-going vessels propelled by electricity? And I don't think this is possible, but it's an exciting idea to look at. What if we can establish the business models where these ocean-going vessels can go and charge their batteries at an offshore wind platform along a route and bit by bit take it across the ocean. But just this question to look at synergetic business models in cross-industry sectors. I think we have a key there to find solutions.
What's your vessel? How's your vessel going to be powered?
Well, it will have a hybrid drive with batteries and diesel engines. But as Mr. Stofford's excellent presentation this morning showed, diesel engines have gone as far as they can. And even I think for deep water shipping, the hybrid has been a bit oversold. It's a good marketing ploy, but for ships that don't go frequently into port, it's limits to what you can achieve with batteries. Certainly for ferries and short range, it's an excellent opportunity, but not
well,
for
let me
us.
put another scenario then. I'll put it to you, Kathy, if I can, because going by what you're saying about the limiting size of what you could use electric for, and the diverse trades that we are seeing in emerging trades, is the answer really bigger is better? Isn't smaller, where you could have cleaner in a more diverse trade, also an answer here?
From a personal perspective, I would think so, simply because you'd also need to think about the advent of automation. Because with an electrified vessel, it'll be much easier to actually automate that and say, right, it's autonomous, it will go and charge itself somewhere and then come back and do its job, basically. So that's the kind of things that I think for the shorter and the medium routes, or the routes that are fixed, that will be the answer probably fairly soon, I think. It's just in the tramp trades, it's just not practical at the moment. So we need to look at alternative fuels. We need to look at hydrogen carriers, with something that isn't ammonia, so it's not as noxious for the crew while we still have crew on board, etc. So there's going to be an interim. And LNG, of course, also as an interim. There's now a big infrastructure for bunkering being built up, but it's always going to be interim.
Apart from in Korea.
Well, it's going to be interim because if we're going to zero carbon, LNG is not the answer.
Got two questions here in the last couple of minutes that we've got here. The questions aren't up there, but somebody's wonderfully optimistic here. How realistic is it to have a blue economy, given we tend to destroy everything we try to exploit? Isn't it too late for us? Sophia?
All right. Well, that's rather fatalistic, I think. I think we have no other option than to look at the solutions in the ocean to meet the challenges that we have created for ourselves. And we can only do that if we look at it from a sustainability perspective. And also, I think we mustn't lose hope. So, I'm going to,
in the last minute then, this last question here, and I don't know whether you could answer this or maybe Kathy here. How realistic, no, sorry, it's the other one. Are there any worthy initiatives with regards to vessel scrapping as far as you know?
Initiatives in terms of...
I'm reading the question.
Well, I think it's a bad question. I think what we should say about vessel scrapping is anybody who scraps a vessel should try and stick to the Hong Kong Convention principles as much as they can, even though it's not in force, and that's where the political will comes back.
But I also add here, just one point there, because there was this in Norway a few years ago, this, what was it called again? So like, we had it briefly in the UK. It was a scrapping thing to encourage people to scrap cars and buy electric cars, effectively.
But it makes no sense, because if you look at, if we're going to achieve 2050, when are we going to start building those vessels? The vessel lifetime, at least in our sector, is 25 years. So time is short to plan these vessels, but we're going to start building them in 2025-ish for 2050 and afterwards.
Well,
I have a comment to that, and I want to challenge this lifetime of a vessel, the commercial lifetime of a vessel. We casually say that it's 25 years, and there are lots of reasons for that. But what if we start looking at designing flexible vessels where we can accommodate for the market changes, where we can accommodate for that this vessel perhaps needs to shift its trade to another region, and we can build it modularized so that it can meet the different needs of the different trades. Start looking at that and taking a holistic innovation perspective on this, and we might be in a situation where we don't need to scrap any more ships.
And cradle to grave, that would be much better economically, absolutely.
how long's the Rev Ocean going to be? Last question. How long's the Rev Ocean going to be on the oceans?
40 years at least.
Can we say thank you very much to our panel?